The Black War, presented by Miss Booth, Miss Bailey, and Mr. Austin.
The main people involved in the Black War were the Tasmanian Aborigines and the British European soldiers and settlers. The Lieutenant Governor, George Arthur, had seen what the invaders were doing to his people and decided to declare war on the British. A man named Tom Longiter, who was a celebrated resistance leader, was also heavily involved in the war. Another person who played a huge part in the war was Captain Marion, who regarded to himself as an inter-party. He thought his assault on the natives was a justifiable and gentlemanly act. One of his comrades, also involved in the war, named Captain Hemlin, received a severe contusion. Another person who played a huge part in the war was named Archdeacon William Broughton, and he served as one of the 6 chairmen for the Aboriginal Committee. Another group of people who were involved in the war were named the Maori Warriors. They were sent to Tasmania to capture the Aboriginal people, then sent to New Zealand as slaves. The natives of the island looked for help from Sir George Murray. He served as the Secretary for State of War and Colonies. 2 people named Henry Reynolds and Noel Lewis showed that the Aborigines accounted for the deaths of over 800 settlers. Fergus Robinson and Barry York have maintained that the Aborigines resisted British and that their attacks were quelled by the superior arms of the pitiless invaders. Another person involved was named Michael Christie. He viewed that the Aborigines posed a huge threat to the Europeans. Another man named Raymond Evans used Queen's Island material to support his conclusion that the Aborigines fought successfully against the Europeans for a great amount of years. James Urey took the Aborigine side and believed that historians have blindfolded themselves to many aspects of Aboriginal life. He also placed stress on the role of disease and arms that took part in the Europeans' defeat of the Aborigines. One of the last people involved in the war was Lieutenant Governor William Patterson, and he is thought to have ordered soldiers to shoot at Aboriginal people whenever they were found, leading to the virtual disappearance of North Midland clans after 1806.
The Black Wars, referring to the conflict between European soldiers and the Aboriginal people of Tasmania. The Black War is noted to have officially begun when a group of British military members opened fire on an Aboriginal hunting party in the early 1820s. Conditions continued to get worse as the British depleted the resources on the island and began to abuse the natives. This included kidnapping, raping, and murdering the Tasmanian people. It is said that the raping of the Tasmanian women and children was the main driving point of the war. The only way the Tasmanian people could retaliate would be attacking small groups and individuals when the chance arose. This was usually done at night against small parties. The British, on the other hand, attacked during daylight and preemptively. Examples of this are events like the Cape Grim Massacre, where roughly 30 Aboriginal men were killed while gathering food by 4 British men. The war was officially ended in 1832, with the victory going to the British. The British began to colonize the island in 1803. Lieutenant John Bowens and a 49-member party were the first British settlement of Tasmania, naming it Hobart. The Black War began when a group of British military members opened fire on an Aboriginal hunting party in the early 1820s. The conflict between these 2 groups continued until 1832, when the war was declared over. The official timeline of the war is from the early 1820s until 1832.
Key points on where everything happened. On an Australian island of Tasmania, originally called Van Diemen's Land, the poorest of Australia's states, it is separated by the shallow Bass Strait. The Black War took place on the Australian island of Tasmania. It was originally called Van Diemen's Land, named after Anthony Van Diemen. Van Diemen's Land was an original name used by most Europeans for the island of Tasmania, which is part of Australia. The name was changed from Van Diemen's Land to Tasmania in 1856. Tasmania is the smallest of Australia's states. The Australian island has remained among the poorest of Australia's states, with a steadily decreasing share of the country's population. The weather is mild to warm in the summers They have mild winters in most areas, and it rains during all 4 seasons, mostly in the winter. Sometimes the southeast even suffers from drought. The picture shown above shows a map of Van Diemen's Land. This is what it was named before it was changed to Tasmania. On this slide, it shows 3 different pictures. The first picture is the island of Tasmania on the map now, under Australia. It is separated by the shallow Bass Strait. The Bass Strait is a sea strait that separates the Australian states of Tasmania and Victoria. To cross, they are regularly crossed by sailing vessels. It can take up to 9 to 11 hours to cross the Bass Strait. The picture shown in the middle is Tasmania after the Black War happened.
The violence between the two groups got so bad that the Lieutenant Governor George Arthur declared martial law in the late 1820s, allowing his colonists to kill natives without worry of persecution. This was in stark contrast to what he said when he was first assigned the position as Lieutenant Governor, as the Aboriginals were under protection of the British government. He then later ordered the existence of the Black Line. This is where the colonists pushed the Aboriginals away from their settlement and towards the Tasmanian peninsula. This did not immediately work, and groups of natives were persuaded to move to Flinders and Hunter Island, where the British thought they could not escape. In the end, an estimated 900 Tasmanian natives died, compared to the 200 Europeans. This led to the Tasmanian people being nearly extinct. The relocation of the Tasmanian natives is what marked the end of the war. This is a tragedy that, sadly, is often overlooked in today's world.